That's really what Ethereum is. You know, people talk a lot about cryptocurrency 2.0 being like the internet of value. We're not the internet of value. Ripple is the internet of value. We're an arbitrary processor for state transaction functions. Got that? We're not the internet of value. Ripple is the internet of value. We're an arbitrary processor for state transaction functions. Got that?
That, ladies and gentlemen, is Ethereum's founder Vitalik Buterin, all the way back in 2014 at a Toronto Bitcoin convention, talking about what Ethereum is and what Ripple, now XRP, is. And he essentially admits that Ripple, XRP, is the internet of value and Ethereum is something quite different. And actually, we're going to play the extended version from that conference of what Vitalik Buterin has to say specifically around Ripple /XRP. It's extremely interesting because we're now at this kind of boiling point, certainly with what we've just seen. And that is the official dismissal of the Ripple Labs Brad and Chris versus the SEC lawsuit. This is from the Securities and Exchange Commission. It says litigation release. Securities and Exchange Commission versus Ripple Labs Incorporated, Bradley Garlinghouse and Chris A. Larson. The SEC announced joint stipulation to dismiss appeals resolving civil enforcement action against Ripple and two of its executives. So they have officially announced this. It goes on to say the Securities and Exchange Commission today filed a joint stipulation dismissal entered into with defendants Ripple Labs, Bradley Garlinghouse and Chris A. Larson that dismisses the Commission's appeal and Ripple's cross appeal pending in the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit and resolves the Commission's civil enforcement action against defendants. Those cross appeals followed a final judgment by the District Court that imposed a $125 million civil penalty against Ripple and an injunction prohibiting Ripple from violating the registrations provisions of the Securities Act of 1933. Following the dismissal of the appeals, the final judgment will remain in effect. So this is great news. It's very interesting on the back end of this. Hester Peirce, who of course is a commissioner at the SEC, comments last week the SEC case against Ripple was finally laid to rest. A welcome development for many reasons, including that minds once occupied with litigation can now concentrate on creating clear regulatory framework for crypto. Paul Atkins, the chair of the SEC, comments saying, Commissioner Peirce is right. With this chapter closed, we now have an opportunity to shift our energy from the courtroom to the policy drafting table. Our focus should be on building a clear regulatory framework that fosters crypto innovation while protecting investors. And this is Project Crypto. You can see Stuart, the chief legal officer, ultimately thanking both of them. This is huge because now we've seen the lawsuit officially dismissed. This clears the runway for Ripple and XRP to do what it was intended to do and what Vitalik Buterin knew it was and is still today, all the way back in 2014. So what I want to do is play you the full clip of what Vitalik had to say at that Bitcoin conference or convention back in 2014. And then we'll bring that up to kind of a more present day take. I also want to dive over to an old, but not that old clip of Chris Larson really explaining what's broadly going on here. And when people talk about the price of XRP, that's ultimately going to depend on its success in enabling and being the apparatus that enables this internet of value. And if it is successful and ends up being responsible or being the kind of technology that enables this new world, I think when people kind of dismiss these really high valuations, hundreds of dollars plus, you know, you can see it in a world where actually XRP is successful. So let's dive over to a more broad clip of what Vitalik said in regards to Ripple, kind of versus Ethereum, what it's trying to do, what they're trying to do. And he kind of really summarizes and understands Ripple quite well. Let's dive into this and then we're going to catch up with Chris Larson.
There's this other interesting system called Ripple. So Ripple here's basically how it works. You have people in the system, everyone in the system has a debt to everyone, can have credit relationships with other people in the system. Not everyone has a credit relationship to everyone else, I might trust Richard with some amount of money, but I might not trust some random person in China. However, if I want to send some money to some random person in China, there's probably going to be some chain of people where each of us have a credit line with each other. So if I want to send $10 off to my friend in China, the way that it works is that I would send $10, where by sending $10, it really mean I would cancel a debt, or we would agree that the debt changed by $10. And then my friend would do the same with his friend, and then his friend would do the same with his friend, and so forth. So Ripple is just a mechanism for automating this. So, as it turns out, Ripple is completely not a new idea. It was around in this concept of koala networks. Now, however, koala networks have been digitized and coupled with a decentralized consensus algorithm. Magic. So, the advantage of Ripple is that with Ripple, you can store any currency on the blockchain if someone is willing to act as a backer. So one of the big problems with Bitcoin so far is its volatility. It's gone up from 1 to 32 to 2 to 266 to 65 to 1200 to did it go to the moon yet? Yeah, it's getting there. So most people don't really want to deal with that. They don't prefer to just have plain old dollars, but still be able to use this sort of hyper efficient financial system in order to transfer them. So you just send them over on the Ripple network. That's really what Ethereum is. People talk about cryptocurrency 2.0 being like the internet of value. We're not the internet of value. Ripple is the internet of value. We're an arbitrary processor for state transaction functions. Got that?
So that's a substantially more extended clip. I wanted to play that. If you think about really the idea, and it started its life off as Altcoin, of course, initially invested in by the likes of Peter Thiel's founder fund. The clip that I'm about to show you is actually Chris Larsen giving a little salute to Peter Thiel, who, if you don't already know, is probably one of the most influential Silicon Valley tech individuals in the world right now. He's behind most major crypto companies. In fact, David Sachs, a crypto czar, literally is in awe of Peter Thiel because he brought David Sachs on to work at PayPal, and we don't want to go down the PayPal mafia route, but they're here again in the cryptocurrency space. Actually, Vitalik Buterin back in 2014, I think, received a $100,000 grant from Peter Thiel, and of course, Altcoin was initially founded by founders von Anderson and Horowitz, so on and so forth. So very interesting that if you think about what Bitcoin did, it essentially figured out a way for the network to send Bitcoins using distributed ledgers and to enable a kind of closed monetary system or an enclosed monetary system, a different monetary system. Whereas Altcoin Ripple just said, okay, well, this technology is very useful. Let's use it to send the value of the world. And Bitcoin's value comes from the amount of value that it has on its network. Could XRPs, well, if it ends up enabling trillions of dollars, it has to kind of have that liquidity to do so and be able to remit that, which could see it have multi-trillion-dollar market cap. What I want to do is actually play you the clip now of Chris Larsen. Some of you are still wondering, what the hell is the internet of value? Well, Chris Larsen gives us a brilliant take here, and then we're going to conclude the video with a little bit of price action. Do subscribe, guys. We bring that heat when it comes to XRP on a regular basis. Let's dive into what Chris Larsen has to say about the internet of value when asked.
And thank you to Peter. It's great to see him again. But obviously there is a ton of noise within the blockchain space. The thing could, cure every ill in the world, and the truth is 90% of it is utter nonsense that's going to go away for sure. But what comes of that, I think this is a fundamental shift in fintech, and what we believe the big thing happening here is the development of a second internet. We call it the internet of value, so that value, money, assets will begin moving as quickly and efficiently as data has been moving for the last 25 years. And we think that is profound in what it's going to do to the world. So while a lot of the attention in blockchain is around new currencies, digital assets, and certainly we work on and advocate for digital assets, XRP is the one that we've really gotten behind, that's really just a subset of a much bigger thing happening. And so really I think you're leading into a world where there'll be complete interoperability between all the money systems, ledgers, networks of the world. And that's really what's missing today. So for example, we all know, wealthy people, people in developing countries, I mean, we can't even really send $50 to Europe without it being all chewed up in fees. That's clearly a problem. Much bigger problem is the 2 billion people living in the developing world who need, according to the Gates Foundation, need to be able to send 50 cents to really be participants in the global economy. You can't do that in a system that's run by SWIFT and correspondent banking, where we all know it might take 3 days to move value between countries, and where there's high failure rates and the costs are very high. So, we've been in the money world, we're living in a pre-internet world where, before we had email, it was very expensive to communicate. Imagine sending letters, nobody does that anymore. Using SWIFT is like sending a letter. When you dropped it in the mailbox, you have no idea where it is, if it got there or not. So getting away from that, I think, is profound. And what we would say is that, a lot of the backlash on globalization today, it's not because globalization is bad, it's essential. It's that it's incomplete.
So something truly monumental is taking place. I wanted to play that clip specifically because he gives Peter Thiel a little shout out. That's an unexplored relationship. Although, again, if you're familiar with Peter Thiel, read his books, by the way, they're brilliant. And he's a truly genius man that's met with a lot of controversy, to say the least. Rightfully, I think so, more than wrongly. This technology was destined from the start. And many cryptos have basically came along to just distract you from it. XRP is the real deal. If there's people out there still calling it a scam coin, the only conclusion that one can come by is that you've just not done your due diligence into it. Talking about price, you guys know where we think this is going, $19.27. That's what we have technical merit for. This, and one hesitates to try and tell you guys where this could lead to, could turn out to be essentially this typically is a bullish continuation pattern. But what you could be looking at here, I don't want to speculate on where XRP's price could get to in the future. I just think it's going to depend ultimately on success. What I have technical merit for at the moment is $19. I do have potentially some technical merit on this being a bullish continuation pattern in the hundreds. Let me know if you guys want that video. When it comes to XRP's price action, it's absolutely prime, guys. All it's really done is ran into all-time high resistance. It's there again. It will break through this. And once it breaks through that, the dam breaks and XRP goes to pretty insane valuations pretty quickly at a time when fundamentally it's literally got the all clear. I don't think it's any coincidence that XRP is technically setting up at a time when fundamentally it's just been permissioned. It's just been given a green light. That's it from me, guys. Don't lose sight of what's going on here. Become a subscriber. We don't just cover XRP. We're not just an XRP channel here. We cover lots of other cryptos that we think are going to be truly impactful. XRP is just one that we think is going to be a real winner. And we've been covering it since we had a channel. That's it from me, guys. I'm going to love and leave you. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you all soon.